drive. Tatum the finish. It is Banner 18. The mission demanding is mission accomplished.
What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with another episode of You Got Boston, live here answering all your questions and giving some updates from the Celtics offseason, including some of the recent conversations that I've had with last year's players. So looking forward to this one. Feel free, as always, to put in any questions in the chat, and I'll go through questions throughout today's show, which will probably be around 30 minutes. And wanted to also share a little bit of updates that we've heard about Jayson Tatum's recovery, Jaylen Brown's recovery. I was at an event yesterday with covering an event. The Jaylen Brown visited a Boys and Girls Club in Dorchester for Juneteenth, made his first public appearance since having knee surgery, was using one crutch, as you can see, but seemed to be moving pretty well. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to just walk around as normal pretty soon. Didn't look like there was any significant swelling or anything like that, and he was in pretty good spirits. And he actually said afterwards that he found the whole thing to be very therapeutic. It was literally 8 days after his surgery that he was out in the community kind of doing things. He was asking kids to explain what Juneteenth was all about. And then he was also giving them a little bit of a motivational talk about kindness and just treating each other better and treating each other with respect. And it was multiple hours. It was super, super hot in this gym. And it was a lot of fun. I always love going to these community events. Anytime, if I ever hear of any player doing something like this, I always want to be there because I think it's nice to remember that fandom and the Celtics and all of that is not just something that lives on Twitter, but it's actually something that lives in schools and communities. And so there's not a ton of opportunities, but I think Jaylen this summer has just been doing more of it. I know some people have been calling it the Don't Trade Me tour. Honestly, I think this just hasn't been covered as much. Like, I think it's been going on for a long time. But he definitely has more free time than usual because he's in Boston and he's rehabbing. And so that's kind of been where he's at so far. And then again, the NBA finals are still going on right now. So normally he would still be, last year or 2 years ago, he would have still been playing. So I think a lot of the players have new uses of time and kind of new things they can do. So that was a super cool event. We did speak to Jaylen on the record for a few minutes. You can watch that video on CLNS Media on YouTube. And he was just basically talking about how much he loves just being out there, being with the kids, and how it just makes him feel a lot better to leave his house when he's recovering. And, he had the surgery literally, as I said, last week to repair that partially torn meniscus. And he was going back and forth for a while about whether or not he was going to have that procedure and if he was going to have it or if it was worthwhile or not. And obviously decided to do it after this knee injury was bothering him since mid-February. So that was pretty cool. And again, you can watch that full interview. Also this week, we heard a little bit about the offseason vibes at the Auerbach Center, which honestly, I think this is kind of an interesting thing that maybe fans don't know a ton about. But we have, most of these players, they took 2 weeks off after the season ended. And most of them are already back into the Auerbach Center where they're training every single day to improve their game, work on their body, get treatment, all of that. So Jayson Tatum has been at the facility regularly. Jaylen Brown has been at the facility regularly. Both of them are dealing with surgery, recovering from surgeries. Obviously, Tatum's surgery more severe than Jaylen's, but nonetheless, both of those guys are kind of dealing with things. And we talked to Torrey Craig yesterday, who is an unrestricted free agent and very well could not be returning back to Boston. He is not sure yet about his offseason plans. But it was pretty cool to hear because he's been still hanging out at the Auerbach Center, and he's been with his son, Braylon, who has been in Boston with him over the last few weeks. And they've just been getting shots up and working out. And it's very busy over there. And he kind of walked us through a lot of the players that are there. Drew Peterson also was on the Garden Report this week. That episode will be out tomorrow, so you can watch that on CLNS Media's YouTube channel. But Drew, a Celtics two-way player, he's been a two-way for the last 2 seasons, had some funny stories for us and also kind of walked through what life is like at the Auerbach Center right now. He's there regularly. Miles Norris, another two-way player, is there regularly. Baylor Shireman, who we had on the Garden Report earlier in the summer, also back in Boston after spending a couple weeks back home in Nebraska. And then interestingly, I thought these were interesting, Peyton Pritchard, who sometimes lives on the Cape in the offseason, he has been at the facility every day as well. So he's already back in action. I think he's somebody that's going to step into a larger role next season, obviously. And so that's a good thing here, is just to have some leadership and some continuity. And then Al Horford, also an unrestricted free agent, has been at the facility, which is, I don't know what to make of that exactly. I've heard that he's, Torrey Craig said that he's been working there, and he's one of the guys that's been in the mix. But the question is, like, what does that mean? That he's just not going to retire? Does that mean that he's not going to be, he just wants to stay in shape, but he might be pursuing other offers? I don't know. It's been pretty quiet on that end, but certainly I think the most surprising outcome to me right now would be Al Horford retiring. Like, I think that he has another year at least left in him based on his play, and then based on the fact that he's clearly still working out regularly. And I thought one of the best things that we got from Torrey Craig, and you can watch that full interview, we just dropped it a couple of hours ago. One of the best things was just his kind of just being around Jayson Tatum and kind of what that's been like, because those two guys, I think they were, a lot of close friends on this team, but those two guys got along pretty well from what it looked like. And asked Torrey a little bit about what their relationship was like, and also just what Tatum has been like as he's been dealing with recovering from this injury.
I know you posted the video, you got to check in with Jayson, see how he's doing. How is he? Yeah, and what was it like to just be able to check in with him, 4 weeks into the rehab now?
It's just to see him good, in good spirits, see him smiling and laughing and joking around, and just just have a normal conversation. Talk about us off season and what I'm up to, and I just look forward to his recovery, the progress he's making, and it's always just good seeing him in good spirits.
And how do you, as a teammate, try to support him through this recovery process? I'm sure you've seen a lot of teammates go through injuries over the years, but this is a pretty big one.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, especially somebody his caliber, when they go down like that, because you just know he loves the game so much, and basketball means so much to him, and he puts so much hard work into it, and dedication and sacrifice and all of the above. And for something like this to happen at that moment, in the playoff, it's just like gut blowing, So I always try to lighten the mood up around him, not be too serious, like, make jokes to see him laugh, see him smile. But it's good to see him just active on social media, because I know probably first couple of weeks are probably the worst, and then now he's kind of getting his routine down. He's always in with his trainer doing his rehab, so I think it'll get easier as time goes on, but yeah, it's always tough seeing somebody like that go down, especially JT, especially a good person like JT.
So you heard in Torrey's words, he's been around, he's been trying to cheer him up a little bit. We obviously saw him on his, I think it was his Instagram story that he posted Tatum working out, but he's been there regularly with his trainer, and I think that'll probably be the case for a lot of next season. I'm sure he'll be very much around the team, just kind of getting his rehab in and working to get better. And again, timeline for the Achilles rupture is anywhere from 7 to 15 months from the people that I've spoken with. So it's possible that he returns next season. It's also very possible that he returns into the fall of the following year. And I think it's too early. It hasn't even been 6 weeks to know exactly where on the spectrum he's going to fall. I do think that from everything we know about him, the work ethic is great, and that's kind of what's needed on your side. Obviously, he has the best surgeons, treatment, all that around him. And then there's also the detail around the fact that he got the surgery so soon after the injury. So that's a little bit of just a roundup of kind of what we've been hearing from players around the offseason. I know everybody's right now thinking about trade rumors and the bigger picture things that could happen in the coming days. And I think for me, one thing I'll say is that it hasn't been a ton coming out of Boston. Like, I think a lot of the stuff you're hearing are from people who maybe are hearing stuff from other teams, or just regular, kind of NBA insiders, or people that just kind of report on the league at large. Things that I think have been pretty widely reported that are most likely true, like as we're trying to sift through like what's true and what's not, is that it would take a lot to get one of the Celtics like top players. I think Jaylen Brown and Derek White are both very, very valued by the organization, and it would take a tremendous amount for a trade for either of those two guys. And then obviously the Celtics are around $23 million above the second apron, and I think it's fair to expect them to get below that, just considering the circumstances around Tatum's injury, and also just the penalties, the basketball penalties that come with spending so much. So I do think that the Kevin Durant trade will be one of the first dominoes to fall in this offseason. And then after that, there will be a ripple effect of other moves. Because when you think about Kevin Durant, like one team that's actively pursuing a star is going to give up a lot of assets for him. And if they're, if a different, say like the Spurs are pursuing Kevin Durant, he has reportedly put them as one of his top choices. If Durant ends up going to Miami, which is another team that he's been linked with through various reporting, now is San Antonio going to shift to Derek White or Jaylen Brown or Giannis or whoever else? So I think that before there's any Celtics-related moves, we'll probably see the Kevin Durant move in the coming days here. This is I'm not reporting on the Kevin Durant move. I haven't been talking to people about it, but if I had to just from understanding the NBA landscape, I would expect it to happen before the draft. Most likely when the draft begins on Wednesday, first round on Wednesday, second round on Thursday. And the Celtics have a pick in both rounds as it currently stands, the number 28 and number 32 pick. So I don't think there have been many specific rumors around the Celtics. I know Chris Mannix mentioned the Spurs as a team to keep an eye on as it relates to Jaylen Brown. I know Drew Holiday's been linked to the Sacramento Kings, I believe, and the Dallas Mavericks, among others. I think Jake Fisher had kind of both of those reports. But from my understanding right now is I think whatever move happens, we might be totally blindsided and not have any really heads up. This team likes to keep things really in-house. And so when news comes out, it's usually because they've already informed the agent lets Shams know or whoever else, and then that's reported. So we're probably not going to hear many specific details before moves actually happen. But I think it's fair to assume that at least one or two guys from the current 6-7 man rotation will be traded. And then obviously Luke Kornet, Al Horford, both unrestricted free agents. Also free agents are Torrey Craig and Drew Peterson, who I mentioned we had on the show over the last few days. And both of those guys expressed a strong desire to stay in Boston. If things work out, Torrey said, who wouldn't want to stay in Boston? Really kind of praised the culture, praised the environment, the organization from top to bottom. And so I think you're going to see some of those end of bench players. This is a good place to be, right? You hear guys talk about their experiences at different organizations. It's not always a great fit. And I think people like playing here, even though their opportunities were more limited. So we'll kind of see all of that. And just a quick message from our friends over at PrizePicks, and then I'll go through some of the questions in the chat here. PrizePicks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. PrizePicks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join millions of users and sign up today. On PrizePicks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports, combine your favorite basketball players with players from baseball, hockey, esports, and much more. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this basketball season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports takes into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. And then also free SGA squares so long as he just needs more than 0.5 points in Game 7, which is coming up on Sunday, which I'm super excited for. Really thrilled that we have our first Game 7 since 2016. I'm really looking forward to that one. So those are just a little bit of the updates and kind of what we've been hearing about players around the league. I think, free agency begins July 6th. We'll see if Luke Kornet is able to be kind of retained by Boston, if Al Horford decides to resign or if he's going elsewhere. But I'm going to go through all these questions, but Adam Smith asks, when will these trades most likely happen? Doesn't this year's draft picks affect the timing? I think most of the trades will happen before the trade deadline, or at least the big trades, because if you're trading Derek or Jaylen or one of those guys, you're probably getting back draft capital for this season. And so, for example, the Spurs have the number 2 pick or whoever else. So most likely, right? It doesn't mean that you can't have trades after the fact, because you could trade rookies, you could trade next year's draft capital and all of that. but I think that's usually how things line up. So I do expect, right now it's Friday. I expect that by this time next week, there will be a lot of big offseason moves as it relates to just teams across the league in general. So I'm looking forward to it. I honestly don't love the trade stuff because I don't like how much misinformation is out there. I'd much rather talk about the basketball and the players themselves than like go into the trade machine. I know some people love that stuff, but I'm looking forward to it just so we can kind of get a better sense of what the roster is going to look like. Shams Charania on ESPN reported the other day that the Celtics are looking next year as more of a retooling year. So I think I saw this question earlier, people that are wondering, like, is this team are they potentially going to tank? Like, they are not going to tank next season. They're not going to have a bad team. Romo here asks, what do you think the organization values more going into next season? A top 5 draft pick or a 50-win season to maintain culture? I think it's probably neither. I don't think they're going to go for a top 5 draft pick because if they were doing that, then they'd be trading like all their key players just for assets for the future, just kind of doing full rebuild mode. I don't think that's where they're at because, we'll see, but I haven't seen any reporting to indicate that. And then I also don't think they're prioritizing winning next season. So it's keeping the players that they see as part of their future, and then also retooling a little bit and getting maybe some potentially younger guys that can play alongside Tatum when he returns. So that's my understanding of how things are going to go. So you might win 50 games or more with that retooled roster. But I don't think either of those is going to be like the guiding principles for this team. So looking through here, have the C's interviewed any number 2 potential players? Not to my knowledge. It's possible, but it hasn't been reported. I think Dylan Harper is pretty much the shoe-in for the number 2 pick. I haven't heard anything about him being at the facility or anything, but we don't know every single player that goes in there. Hoops Hype keeps a list of which players have worked out with the Celtics, but it's all based on like what's been reported. Torrey Craig mentioned the other day that when he was with the Sun at the facility for off-season workouts, there were some draftees that were or potential draftees that were running lines, and Braylon kind of jumped in, and like I don't know who those players were, but like there's been players in and out of the facility all the time. Last year, like right after the finals, they started having players looking at her right during the finals as well. So it's just a kind of ongoing thing. And question here from Celtics champs once again: if Pritchard steps into the starting role, do you think JD Davison can truly step into 15 minutes a night? It's an interesting question. I do think it's pretty likely. I would expect Pritchard to be a starting guard next year for the Celtics. Like I would guess it's most likely that Derek or Drew is gone in the offseason, and more likely that Drew than Derek is gone. And so from what I currently understand, like it's likely that Peyton Pritchard will start. Does that mean that JD Davison steps into a backup role? I don't know. He's been on the Celtics for 3 seasons as a 2A player. Obviously had a great season last year, won G League MVP. Was super, super fun to watch in this role. Drew Peterson was just talking to us about that the other day, just like how much he just kind of figured out that level and kind of cracked the code there. Does that mean can he play that role on a team? Absolutely. I think that he has shown that he can be an NBA player, or at least that he deserves that chance. Will it be in Boston? I think that depends on the return from some of their trades, because they might make a trade, like say they trade Drew Holiday and they get back 3 young players. Like maybe they believe in those young guards more than they do in JD Davison. So that's really the question for me. JD, they did convert his contract to a standard deal ahead of the playoffs, so that benefited him financially. But there's a team option. I think they have like another 10 days until they have to pick up that option, or he'll be an unrestricted free agent. And I don't know what they're going to do, but the fact that he just hasn't really been around in Boston like the last couple of years, even last year, there were opportunities to bring him to Boston more. He was really in Maine the whole season. Drew Peterson had more of those opportunities. I don't get the sense that they view him as like a part of the future. I could be wrong, and I would love for them to give him a chance because I think that he's a fun player and that he just has so much longevity with his organization. But I think it's more likely that he's somewhere else playing 15 minutes a night next year. But it all depends. I mean, it's so hard right now. Like this whole offseason is such a massive question mark and I don't think the Celtics don't even know yet, right? Because as I mentioned, there's other teams that are waiting for other trades and other things to happen. So JD Davison is one of those guys that I think it's going to depend on what the young talent looks like by the end of the season and kind of where he falls into things. But I think that he has shown flashes of being an NBA backup guard, and he's still really young, even though he's been in the G League for 3 seasons, and that feels like a really long time. Who do I have in Game 7? I initially predicted the Indiana Pacers in 7. After they lost Game 4, I kind of lost faith because the way they lost Game 4 felt very reminiscent to the Celtics losing Game 4 in 2022, and the Warriors just kind of their greatness overshadowing everything. And so I lost faith a little bit. I did not think they were going to win yesterday, but they did in resounding fashion, and they're still my pick for Pacers in 7. I really hope they can get it done. I can't remember the last time I've enjoyed watching a team that I had no connection with, not a local team or anything like that. I don't know any of the players. Just love watching them play. I think most of the country is probably rooting for them, I would imagine. And it's just one of those cool underdog stories where, yes, this run will always matter. If, even if they lose, people will still remember all of Halliburton's game winners and the upsets and everything. But the teams that just make the finals and don't win, like they do kind of get forgotten, relatively speaking, to the champions. Like, you can't compare it. So a lot is on the line. I also think the Thunder are going to be good for a really long time. They have a great young core. They have insane assets coming up. Like, Nikola Topic is going to be back next year. He was like a lottery pick almost. So they have a lot to be excited about. I think the Pacers, I don't know, it's going to be a little bit hard to replicate what they did this year. So I'm rooting for the Pacers. We'll see what happens, but I think they have a good chance here. Jarrell asks, can the C's get Jeff Van Gundy to replace Austin Ainge in the office? Who plays that role now? Jeff Van Gundy is, to my understanding, still an assistant on the Clippers. I don't think that he's going to leave there. I haven't heard anything about him being interested in a front office role. They are down somebody right now, so like they don't have Austin Ainge. He has been critical. I think that he was honestly a little bit underappreciated by Celtics fans a little bit over the past few years, or at least like unknown. Like, he kind of flew under the radar. Everybody knows about Mike Zarin. Mike Zarin has been with the organization for a long time, but so is Austin Ainge. And I think it probably didn't benefit to him that he is Danny Ainge's son, and a lot of times you just kind of get viewed as like the son of, somebody that's more high profile. But they're definitely going to replace somebody. I would imagine it's probably going to be later in the summer, because right now I would imagine it would be hard to integrate somebody into the front office. They have a very small front office as far as like the people that are actually in the decision-making room. It's fewer people than in most organizations. So we'll see, who they replace. I know Austin Ainge played college basketball. He has like the basketball mind, comes from that background. I think he was a starter on a March Madness team. So we'll see if they bring somebody that has kind of that basketball background as well. But I know Jeff Van Gundy was missed. His impact was really strong in his first season with Boston as an advisor. And from what I understand, he had a great impact on the Clippers and their defensive schemes and everything this past year. And then just as far as coaching goes, Phil Pressey will be the head coach of the Maine Celtics. So, he's going to have his first opportunity in the G League. I think it's pretty cool because Phil Pressey was on the Maine Celtics. I think it was the Red Claws back then as a player, was on the Boston Celtics, has been a player development coach, and now he gets this opportunity. And in the later half of the season, the last couple of weeks of the season, Phil Pressey was sitting in on Joe Mazzulla press conferences. And I was kind of thinking to myself, like, why is he doing that? Like, is there a point? Is there, like, what is he just trying to learn? And I'm thinking now it was probably because he is going to have to do a lot of media availabilities next year as the head coach. Or not a lot, but whenever we go up there's a few of us that cover the Maine Celtics games, then he'll have to do pregame, postgame press conferences. So he got a little bit of a taste in what those were like, shadowing Joe Mazzulla. But so he'll be there, and then Tyler Lashbrook should be back in Boston. And then outside of that is at least what it appears. And I don't think there will be substantial coaching changes otherwise, from what I've heard. So maybe they will add somebody, but as I currently understand it, there's last summer they lost a lot of key guys from the coaching staff because Charles Lee went to Charlotte, and he took with him a couple of assistants as well. This year there isn't any substantial turnover like that, so a little bit more continuity on that end, which is probably helpful. From what I understand, Sam Cassell is staying. Someone here asks, I thought he was heading to college. I think there were some rumors around that, but I don't think any of that played out. I think there was I forget what the program was, but there was a program that he was potentially rumored, and I think Steve Pett or somebody reported it, but he did not end up getting or taking that job. Question here: if Al Horford is done as a Celtic, do you think his jersey winds up in the rafters? My instinct is always to be like, yes, all of these people, we retire everybody's jerseys. So I'd probably be on the more generous side as it compares to most people if you're asking that question. But I actually would say Al should retire. He should have his jersey retire in Boston. At the end of the day, like he is a Hall of Fame player. If he has the jersey retired anywhere, it would be with the Celtics. There's audio here. Sorry, I'm just okay. Can you? With the Celtics in 2016, like that was such a critical free agency move, and then coming back, winning a championship, mentoring Tatum and Brown, and kind of just being the veteran voice through that ring. Like I think from this generation, from this era of Celtics players, Jaylen, Tatum, and Al, all three of those jerseys will be retired regardless of what happens moving forward. But Al, obviously, less of a sure thing. I'm curious if you guys can say in the chat what you guys think. I know they can't retire every single number, so I understand that there's some limitations there. But yeah, so we'll see. I'm really curious to see what he does moving forward if he comes back to Boston. I think that he would be so worthwhile to keep with the Celtics, even though next year is not a win now season, and he is kind of a win now player because of his age. But like, if he thinks he has 2 years left and he signs like a 2-year minimum deal with the Celtics, and next year he's just kind of like one of the fixtures in the locker room and keeps a level of continuity and mentorship and all of that, and has a role to play obviously on the floor. And then next year Tatum comes back and he's still on the team. Like I could see that making sense. But if he thinks he only has 1 year left, maybe he goes elsewhere. I don't know how much the pressure of like because he won one championship, maybe now he's more comfortable not going to kind of ring chaser or whatnot. So really curious. Obviously, there's a lot of big questions around this team, and Al Horford's probably not the biggest one. Probably the biggest one is what do they decide with Jaylen Brown and Derek White. But Al Horford is one that I'm personally very curious about because he's just been such a big part of this group of Celtics players. Jayson Tatum has said it many times. He's his favorite teammate, all of that. So we'll see kind of how that plays out. But again, I'm really excited that we're nearing the beginning of like actually seeing how things shake up here. And the first couple moves will dictate what we have a better understanding of for the rest of the summer. So I'll just say there's a lot of great content right now on CLNS Media. We had the Torrey Craig interview that came out a couple of hours ago. Check that interview out. Honestly, it was such a fun interview. We talked to him for like 30 minutes. We had Baylor Schreiman on a couple of weeks ago, but Torrey came out today, and then Drew Peterson will be out tomorrow. So if you want to hear from like actual Celtics players right now and you don't want to just be like drowning in rumors, this is where you want to go, CLNS Media. You're not going to find all this stuff anywhere else. Jaylen Brown, as you can see here, spoke with us yesterday as well in an exclusive interview about how he's doing after surgery and kind of being a part of the community. And then please subscribe, like this video, share it with your friends. If you're looking for off-season content, everything, this is the place to be, CLNS Media. We're doing weekly Garden Report shows still, so we did one on Monday after Game 5. So even though there are no more Celtics games, we're still doing some live reaction shows wherever we're able to. So subscribe, like. You can find my podcast and You Got Boston podcast. Hopefully we have some fun stuff coming up as well. And we're going to have some short draft profiles coming out in the next couple of days as well. I know people are curious. I feel like the draft doesn't have that much buzz right now because everybody kind of knows where the first couple picks are going to go. And this, from the Celtics perspective, I think there are a lot of bigger questions, but it'll be interesting to see who they're able to sign, who they bring, and kind of where things go from there. So as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for the questions. We'll have another show soon. Probably next time I do one of these, we'll have like actual news to discuss, and it won't just be about things that people are saying or community events that I'm attending. So looking forward to that. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your weekend and enjoy Game 7.